is now that we have the spaceship actually showing up on the screen, it'd be really useful if we could move it left and right so that we could shoot down the aliens' spacecraft. So last time we were here, this is where we were. When you run your program, you get your splash screen, your title screen, your menu screen, and when you click on the start button, it then goes to the game scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the spaceship left and right. That's the goal for today. So we're going to head back to game scene, and what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and we're going to go to this section called update. So in this update section, what happens, you'll see two parameters in the function time and delta. And what's happening is update automatically gets triggered by phaser, hopefully around 60 times a second, so you have a nice fluid game. And we can write code in here that will then trap certain events or print things to the screen or update our code or whatever we want to do that happens over and over again in our game. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to create a variable just in this local function, and we're going to call it keyLeftObject. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at our scene, and it's going to look for input from the keyboard, and it's going to look for the key left, which is the left-hand arrow key on your keyboard. And that's going to give us information about what's happening to that key 60 times a second, and then we can hopefully use that for something useful. So once we have the variable, then we can do things like create an if statement and say if the keyLeftObject, its property is down, if that is exactly the same as true, then that means someone has just hit and the left key is currently down. Once the left key is down, then we can do something, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our ship, its X location, and we're going to subtract a little bit from it. So if this happens, we're going to take the ship and we're going to take its X property and we're going to subtract a little bit from it. So there's several ways you can do this. One easy way is you just say its ship property.x is -1. So what will happen is 60 times a second, if the left-hand arrow key is down, our ship is going to move 1 pixel to the left. Whoops, I forgot the x value here. So we're going to take its x coordinate, whatever it happens to be, we're going to subtract 1 to it, and we're going to shove it back so that the x coordinate has been updated. So I'm just going to run this again. So here is our scene, and I'm actually going to press the down arrow, and you can see it is moving, but very, very slowly. Because we're using 1080p, and it's 1960 pixels, it's moving really slowly. So maybe 1 is a bad choice. We're going to take that, and I'm just going to change it to 15 so that it moves a little faster. It might look a little choppier, but at least it'll give us some more semblance of being able to move it at a more reasonable pace. So now when I press the key, you'll notice it moves quite fast, which is very useful. But when I press the right arrow, nothing happens. So just moving in one direction isn't really useful. So we're going to do the exact same kind of logic that we did for the left-hand key, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the right-hand key. So we'll create another variable this time called right key, and we can just sort of grab and copy the exact same kind of code since we're going to be doing the exact same kind of thing. In this case, instead of looking at left key object, we're going to be looking at the right key object, and we're not going to be subtracting. This time we're going to be adding so that it moves to the right-hand side. So hopefully that will make our little spaceship move left and right, and that'll be much more useful. So now I can press not only left, but I can press right, and my ship can go left or right. But there's still one other problem. My ship can go right off of the screen, and it can come back, but that's not really useful. So there's several things you could do. Some games, when you come off of the right-hand side of the screen, it might wrap and show up on the left-hand side. Others will prevent you from actually moving off of the screen. And that's what we're going to do. So instead of just blindly moving your ship in the X direction, we're going to do a check first. And we're going to say, actually, we're not going to do the check first. We're actually going to do the check afterwards. And we're going to say, hey, wait a minute. If I've actually moved off of the screen completely, so I'm going to do the left-hand side first. If I've moved off of the screen completely, so my X position is negative, well, then just make my X position back 0. So the ship will sort of bounce back and forth and hover at the border. So right after I move it, I'm going to do a check, and I'm going to say, hey, check the ship's X position. And if it is less than 0, then just set it back to 0. So if for some reason I do go off of the screen, just make me go back. And by setting it to 0, I'm actually going to be sort of half of the ship will be off, but the part that I shoot with will still show up, so I can get a missile fired off right at the edge. So let's try this again. See how things work. So we can move right, that's good. We can move left. And if we move all the way off of the screen, you'll notice I can go off the screen, but only halfway, which is what I was looking for. If you wanted it to not go off the screen at all and sort of hug the edge, you could find out what the value should be. Instead of 0, it might be 50 or something, and you could do that. So now we need to do the exact same thing, but we need to do it for the right-hand side. And we know that the dimensions of our screen are in game.js. And it's 1920. That's the value that we will need to check that if we go too far in the other direction. So if this dot ship, its X position is greater than this value, then just set it to that value again. So this dot ship dot X is assigned that value. And that should make it so that we can't go off the right-hand side now. So let's just confirm that the left-hand side isn't broken. So that's good, that works. And if we try to go all the way over to the right-hand side, the same thing happens and we're good to go. So that's useful. This line of code is sometimes shortened. Instead of saying, take this X value and add 15 and then assign it back, there is a shorthand way of writing this because it happens so often of updating a variable by adding something to it. And what it is if you're adding, you just say plus equals 15. And the same thing here, if you are subtracting, there is a minus equal, and that will just take it and, minus equal. It will just take it and put it back into this variable. So what's happening is it grabs the X, whatever its value is, it just subtracts 15 from it and puts it back. So if you ever see a minus equal or a plus equal operator, that's what's happening. And that's all we're going to do in this